Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Rocío Martín Villalba y quiero darte la bienvenida al tercer Congreso Virtual de Coaching y Familia. El coaching llegó a la familia para quedarse. Un congreso que ha sido organizado por Family and Coaching Academy, escuela acreditada por la International Association of Coaching. El único propósito de este congreso es conmemorar el Día Internacional de la Familia este viernes 15 de mayo. Tal y como quedó establecido en la Organización Mundial de las Naciones Unidas desde el año 1993 y cuya única finalidad es resaltar la importancia de la familia como el núcleo más importante de la sociedad. La familia es el espacio donde se forjan los valores y los principios para lograr una identidad de sus miembros y poder garantizar una sociedad saludable para nuestro mundo. Queremos que nos acompañéis desde ayer 12 y hasta el domingo 15 de mayo para que juntos vivamos cada una de las ponencias que nuestros conferencistas han preparado con un alto contenido de valor. El objetivo es que las disfruten en familia y que puedan tomar lo mejor de cada una de ellas para empoderarse en estos tiempos de grandes desafíos que nos han tocado vivir. Te queremos recordar que cada día a las 7 de la mañana recibirás un correo con los enlaces para ingresar a las conferencias. Recuerda que cada enlace es para la misma conferencia, para la conferencia de esa hora. Es muy importante que reviséis vuestras bandejas de correos spam y promocionales, porque por la cantidad de correos, algunos toman ese camino equivocado y no queremos que os perdáis ninguna conferencia. Los horarios de conexión los podéis ver en la página web del Congreso, www.familyandcoaching.com/tercer-congreso. Por favor, si te está gustando las conferencias de este tercer Congreso Internacional de Coaching y Familias, compártelas, házselas llegar a tus amigos, a tus familiares y comparte también en redes sociales para que podamos llegar a muchas más personas. Os invitamos a incorporaros a nuestra sala virtual de Zoom 10 minutos antes de cada conferencia para que disfrutéis toda la conferencia en tiempo real. En la conferencia de hoy vais a tener la opción de escuchar una traducción simultánea, porque nuestra invitada va a impartir la conferencia en inglés. Así que revisa tu Zoom y en el menú de debajo tienes un globito del mundo, un mundito. Tienes que seleccionar ahí, te da la opción de español o en inglés para que puedas oírla o en versión original o traducida. Importante que recuerdes seleccionar el mundito, el canal a través del cual quieres escuchar a nuestra conferencista para que no te pierdas absolutamente nada de lo que tiene que contarnos. Y ahora bien, sin más preámbulo, queremos presentarles a nuestra ponente de hoy, René Edghill-Smith. René cuenta con más de 30 años de experiencia educativa, administrativa y asistiendo a adolescentes, jóvenes y adultos en el logro de sus objetivos educacionales y profesionales. René Edghill-Smith se forma y ejerce como Life Coach. Actualmente ostenta el nivel de Masteries Practitioner de la IAC, de la International Association of Coaching, organización esta en la que lidera el comité de membresías de su capítulo en USA. Además de pertenecer a varias asociaciones de educadores, también es experta en la interpretación de lengua de señas en inglés. Bienvenida, René, a este congreso, donde todos nuestros invitados e invitadas están esperando para escuchar en vivo tu ponencia Coaching para personas con discapacidad y sus familias. René, el micrófono es tuyo. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm overwhelmed by such a great introduction. Thank you so very much. And hello, everybody. I am Renee, and I will be discussing coaching clients with disabilities and their families. It is really an honor to present during this prestigious conference and for such an important cause as St. Jude Children's Hospital. I'd like to take the time to thank the leadership of Family and Coaching Academy and their staff for the invitation. So let's get started. They did share some things with me. I just want to say, I am married. I have 4 children. I have a dog and 2 cats. I have 4 children, blended family. I am affiliated with the IAC, as I said, mentioned just previously, and the founder of Die Hard Enterprises. And again, working with teenagers, adults, the deaf, the hard of hearing, and different disabilities throughout the 30 years of my career. I do have certification in teacher of the handicapped, and I do have certification in teacher of the deaf and hearing as well. Again, I am an interpreter. My friend told me don't forget to mention this, but I am an interpreter for the deaf, so I tend to use my hands a lot. So if you see that, just know that it's me trying not to start interpreting. All right. So in our time together, I will discuss disabilities, what it is, types of disabilities, what's the difference, the client and their families, and the coach and the client. So what is a disability? A disability is a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities, and therefore needs special education and or related services. That is an abbreviated version of the definition. The actual definition is much more extensive, but I will be incorporating parts of the definition in the presentation today. 26%, that's 1 of 4 adults in the US have some type of disability. 26% is a high percentage. And since it is so high, as a professional, we will encounter clients with disabilities. This we must embrace and adjust our practices to incorporate methods to meet the needs of our clients. So what types of disabilities are there? There's 14 different types of disabilities according to the special education law. I'm only listing 5, and this is due to my experiences. There is no disability that's more important than the other. Please know that. My experiences have been predominantly with clients who have learning disabilities, specific learning disabilities, emotional disabilities, deafness, or people that are hard of hearing. What are the types of disabilities you may encounter as a professional? That depends on the services that you provide. Now, looking at the disabilities, we have cognitive disabilities where there's a mental processing disorder. And some of them, you might recognize the terms autism, deafness, cerebral palsy, and brain injury. There's also emotional disabilities, where there's emotional, mental, or erratic behavior that affects the decision-making process. So that would look like conduct, behavior that is unlike what is necessary for the situation that may be occurring at the time. Anger, defiance, and anxiety. Now, we've all heard about anxiety. We have a lot of our youth that are experiencing anxiety at this time. Other health impairments, chronic or acute health problems that limits strength, vitality, or alertness, including a heightened alertness to external stimuli. Some of them are attention deficit disorder or attention hyperactivity disorder, arthritis, sickle cell anemia, asthma, diabetes, epilepsy, and Tourette's syndrome. Multiple disabilities, that's a combination where a person can have they can have 2 or more disabilities that are continuous. So for an example, someone can have any one of the cognitive disabilities that I spoke of before. So in other words, they can have autism, but they can also be blind. So that person has multiple disabilities. And lastly, the one for our conversations today is specific learning disability. the disorder in which the process of written or spoken, the disorder or the processing of written, spoken, or the use of language. And we can find them occurring in listening, reading comprehension, oral expression, basic reading fluency skills. So as a professional, I'm sure that you may have encountered serving a client with a disability, but just weren't aware of it. So let me give you an example. If you give someone a recommendation and that your client, you give them a recommendation and that client becomes agitated or argumentative or even angry and could even storm out, you may have encountered someone with an emotional disability. When serving a person with specific learning disabilities, they may hear what is being said, but may not comprehend what is being said and need additional time and or examples to get to the actual meaning. They may say things like, I don't know how to say what I'm thinking, or I can't put it in words. Or if a client continues to say, I don't know what you mean, and they start asking, do you have that? Can I have that written down somewhere? Or can you show me where I can go do more and find out more about it? That person probably would have a cognitive disability or have a specific learning disability. Also, professionals need to be aware, coaches, doctors, they also need to be aware there are people that are not diagnosed as disabled, but may exhibit the characteristics of a disability. And I want to share an example with you. There was a young lady that I knew that used to fight all the time. And she had emotional outbursts. So she was cursing at everyone and just storming out of her classroom, crying. And it took up a lot of social capital. In other words, a lot of different people tried to serve her or find out what the issue was. And the way that they really dealt with her ultimately was they suspended her from school. And I recognized I needed to deal with her or coach her in an unconditional way. The way that she was responding was not that of the behavior, again, that was required for whatever might have transpired. So if I didn't do that, she would have been expelled from school. So what happened was, in my time with her, we discussed her behavior, her desires, and unconventionally, I recommended tools that she could use to get her point across without putting herself in jeopardy. As a result, she fought less, she controlled her outbursts, and she was able to stay in class. And she too was amazed at that. So that can be, I mean, that's a real severe type of example. But again, you may experience someone that cries a lot, or you may experience someone that keeps saying, I don't get it. I just don't get it. And that might be because they've had a disability. So what is the difference? What's the difference when coaching? What's the difference when you're coaching a client with a disability? When you're coaching, the client normally shares their needs, what they want to work on. And when you're coaching a person with disabilities, the team identifies the most important areas and the coach takes the lead. The team includes the client. Now, this is if they are a student or a young adult. They will have a case manager, a coordinator or a coordinator. If they're a child and they're in school, they would have a case manager, a coordinator, a learning disabilities teacher consultant, a social worker, a school psychologist, a learning disabilities teacher consultant, and possibly a behavior therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, depending on what their disabilities are. So that team is the person that, the people that a coach would have to communicate with, as in the other differences that's different that's what's different with life coaching. A coach that works with students or people with disabilities have to communicate and collaborate with the family, the caretaker, or a case manager or coordinator if there is one. And by doing that, you get the information on the client and know where to lead best. So other ways that it's different, you when you're working with clients that have disabilities, provide choices. You provide choices. When you're normally coaching, you usually allow the client to produce choices that they might have. But with coaching with disabilities, you may offer the choices. Also, in getting the message across or having them comprehend exactly what you mean, you may have to provide multiple examples. You might have to give multiple reminders. You might have to model or act out or demonstrate different actions or things that you would want them to know. Like we'll talk about this later, but social cues, how to read someone's face when they've just missed a cue and they've said something that was a little off in conversation. You would have to show them what that looks like, not only on your face, but maybe using technology to do so. So let's talk about the client. The items listed here are not all inclusive, but they have been some of my experiences. Not all of them are here. Self-advocacy. When we're talking about self-advocacy is one of the ones I feel most important to talk about. It deserves attention. The client must know how to speak up for themselves. For an example, one of my clients had to go to the police precinct, and this was a deaf adult. She had to go to the police precinct to follow up on a report she previously filed. She was able to speak with confidence and determination with the sergeant, insisting that something be done with the report that she had filed. As a coach, I have witnessed times when that is not always the case. There have been times when the client did not know how to ask for something they needed or an action that should have been taken. Self-advocacy is of the utmost importance to survive in our society. Next on the list of importance is self-management. Self-management is so necessary to navigate relationships in our society. Self-control, having self-control, organization, not only organizing papers or organizing your day, but even organizing your thoughts. When it's appropriate to say something, self-awareness, knowing who you are, what you believe, what you think about yourself. Hyperactivity, yes, hyperactivity is a characteristic of a disability, but being able to control one's body is important. Your thoughts and actions is key. For example, impulsivity. Speaking random thoughts during conversations can impede communication with family, friends, business, professionals, and eventually end up isolating that client that doesn't know to put a hold on or control on those impulsive or random thoughts that pop up. And I can say, I was one of those people. I can admit I was one of those people with the random thoughts. So acting without thinking is another thing. Acting without thinking of the repercussions of your actions can cause our clients to experience serious brushes with the law. Think about that. So this is impulsivity, it flows, of course, it's connected with attention deficit disorder. And that's the hyperactivity part of ADD. So having impulsive thoughts and
pensamientos impulsivos y hacer cosas sin considerar las repercusiones puede causar que sucedan muchas cosas que no teníamos la intención de que sucedan.
Are how they learn. It is important for clients that are students going on any level of school, any level of education, even on the job, to know how they learn, to know their learning profile, which is how their brain processes information, and their learning style, the best way their brain receives the information, the best way that it can get into their mind, their brain to process it. It helps them to be able to do, when they are able to know their learning profile and their learning style, they are able to better advocate for themselves and what they need in all learning environments. Top thing to consider. Looking at the social acceptance list, the one that stands out for me and in my experiences, conflict resolution. Without learning how to resolve disagreements can impact friendships and relationships. Knowing how to disagree and value the opinions and feelings of others is an integral part of maintaining relationships. I had a group of girls that fought with each other because they were close at one time. They didn't realize that they could still be friends and be friends with other people. So they would come together and they would argue, and then they would sometimes fight. So I had to sit with them and talk with them and coach them in regards to friendships and to value the person's right to make friends with other people and not be mad and not have to feel that they're in jeopardy in doing so. So from the support systems under the community listing, it is important for all people with disabilities to know their support system. Who is their support system? Who are the people that they can go to when they have questions or concerns about things that happen in their everyday life? It is important that they know not only who they are, but what their responsibilities are. What are the responsibilities of my support team, the members of that support team? Not only do they need to know that, but they also need to know when and how to access them. Following the support system is acquiring jobs. I have multiple times had to coach my clients on how to interview, how to search for jobs, and how to conduct themselves when on the job. And these are skills many people assume that everyone has, but many clients don't have those skills. And as a coach with clients with disabilities, you may find yourself, and more times than not, you will find yourself addressing job skills. This isn't unusual to have to address these skills with clients of disabilities. So one can see that coaching people with disabilities may require more effort and involvement, but don't get discouraged because it's worth every bit of energy and emotion and time. Because when you see them succeed, that's it, because that's what it's all about. So let's talk about the client and their families. Supporting, when the coach has a client with disabilities, supporting the family is very much a part of coaching that client. First, the family, I found myself having to tell caretakers of the rights of their client, and also telling the caretaker of the rights for themselves. And that's really important to know. And also to know the rights of the client, the programs that are available to them, the transportation to services, and some services they can even have come into their home. They can have therapy done in their home. So these are things that caretakers have to be informed of, and many times the coach is one that will share that information. There are people on the team that will share that information too, but sometimes after meetings, parents or caretakers, they're not sure about exactly what was said. So sometimes the coach has to follow up and share the information again with the caretaker. Sometimes the resources and abilities of the caretaker can be affected by the coach and team recommendations. So what has to happen is you have to, as the coach, plan with the client and the parent or the caretaker, if a caretaker is involved. And the caretaker can also let the coach know what is possible, what's not possible, as far as physical, as far as location, as far as movement with the client. And these are things that a coach has to do. They have to know whether it is even feasible for the caretaker. Also, directing family members to resources to assist the client. It is important. Sometimes the resources and abilities of the caretaker can be affected. And if the caretaker isn't or doesn't have that support, something like this can happen. I had a client who was hard of hearing, and she was raised because she was the only person in her family that was deaf. She was raised as if she were hearing. Her parents didn't know the resources that were available for their daughter. And not only that, but they also wanted their daughter to be hearing. And you say, yes, they wanted her to be hearing. So what they did was they sent her all through grade school to high school to a hearing school, and a school that was only speech only. And what happened was when she went to college, that is when she saw that she had a language of her own, a language that belonged to her and other people that were deaf or hard of hearing, like she was. Now, this is upsetting. And as coaches, we must recognize that there are many programs for clients with disabilities, and we need to coach them through experiences like that one. So also advocating for the client. We have to make sure that the caretaker is knowledgeable of resources and that they can advocate for their client, for their family member. If there's not a program in existence in a school, then the program that fits their disability, then the school is responsible to create one or provide transportation to a school that has one. A caretaker needs to have that information. Okay, and self-care. When we talk about self-care, many times, the client may have only one caretaker. Other members are not regularly present in their life. It's important that the caretakers are aware of their mental health and take time to take care for themselves. So another situation I'd like to share is I have a client, and she's still my client today. I have a client that came up to New Jersey to be with her daughter who was having her first child. Now, the daughter is her only child. The daughter had her first child who was a son. Then she had another baby. Now with the first son, he was diagnosed with autism. And the mother had a job where she traveled all the time. The father was a very prominent lawyer in New York City. So the grandmother ended up being their caretaker for the grandson that was diagnosed with autism. And when I got involved, it was to the point where my client wanted to go back to her home, which is in Georgia. And she found that she couldn't because she was so enmeshed into the caretaking of her grandson. So what she did was, in our coaching sessions, we talked about her desire and what she needed to do, what the possibilities were. And she eventually did end up going home to her home. But then her son-in-law died. She had to go back up to help her daughter to manage with the kids. Now, mind you, when I first met her, when we first started our partnership, the first son was 2. The son is 11 today, and she is still in New York City. So we're working again on how she can get freed to come back to Georgia so she can take care of herself. Sometimes the caretaker, they have to be and know, we have to know that it's important that they take care of themselves, especially if they're the only one taking care of the client. Sometimes the caretaker needs to share their concerns. Needs to share their concerns with a team member. And here's where a coach can support the caretaker by doing what coaches do, engaging, listening, and exploring possibilities. Caretakers may need the coach from time to time. Okay, so now let's move on to the coach. When you are a coach and you have a client that has disabilities, becoming familiar with the client's disability and how it can impact the client's progress is so important. And that's when you know that you go to the team, you find out about the disability, you need to find out what triggers your client, which could make the difference between the skill you tackle and also the success of achieving a skill. Facilitating change by focusing on the strengths and the widest available range of resources. Selecting strategies that utilizes the client's strengths with resources to support that strength will be like a springboard where the client will be thrusted to go forward towards success. So that's important to utilize and bolster up their strengths to help them achieve. Identifying the level of independence and aligning activities and goals as a base, as a starting point. So knowing their ability and then using that, talk to them, collaborate with them, and together decide what's next based on the information that is provided by the team. Being flexible is of the utmost importance. You may be called upon to attend a meeting. You may be called upon to speak to family members. You may be called upon to talk to a spouse or a loved one. Be prepared for that. And honesty is the last thing that we're talking about in regards to coaching. There's more areas. These are the most important. at least in my experience. Be honest, know your limitations, identify areas beyond your scope, and refer the unmet need to the appropriate members of the team. That is important that we do that. And we're honest with ourselves about how we think and what we believe, what we're willing to do, and what we're able to do concerning the success and care of our clients. Many times clients are told information about their abilities by team members, teachers, families, family members, friends, and resources, but those things are written, but we can't put a ceiling on a person's mind, their abilities, or what they can achieve. So don't take on a client because of the challenge also. We need to take the client because we know that we can serve and help them. So last, the coach. Coaching clients. So, oh, I'm so sorry. I have to go back. So the coach, that was the coach. So if, my situation might be unique, but when we look around and we ask others what they do, who their clients are, you'll see that what they do and what you do is unique as well. Please note, being a coach of clients with disabilities requires flexibility, patience, compassion, and intention. So you must believe big for your clients, and that must come across in every way possible. So at this time, I want to ask, do you have any questions? And thank you for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias, René. Tenemos una pregunta. ¿Dónde puede alguien formarse en este tipo de coaching específicamente?
Well, they do have organizations. If you look for exceptionalchildren.org, they do have like programs that you can enter into and be able to become a coach of clients with disabilities. That's only one. So if you take my email and shoot me an email, I can get back to you about others and what you can do.
¿Hay alguna pregunta más para René? Me ha parecido fantástica la invitación que nos ha hecho como coaches de formarnos, de conocer más sobre la discapacidad de nuestro cliente y de formar equipo con las familias o con los cuidadores. Y esa importancia también de la salud mental y del autocuidado del cuidador. Hay una pregunta más, René. ¿Se ha encontrado con familias que rechacen este coaching?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, they welcome it, not only welcome it, but, I have always been received and even considered like part of the family. I have gone to funerals and they've asked me to speak. So no one has ever refused this kind of coaching.
A mí me gustaría hacerle una pregunta a René propia. ¿Qué tipo de discapacidad de las que sueles enfrentar, de las que sueles trabajar, le cuesta más ser consciente de sus limitaciones y de cuál es ese proceso de aprendizaje que tienen?
It all depends, because even though they have a disability, there are different degrees to that disability. So it could, I mean, all of them can be difficult. And I'm sorry to give you that kind of an answer, but that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. So I can say that specific learning disability, that is difficult, but it doesn't stop there. Autism, if there's a certain area where the comprehension isn't happening, it's difficult. And likewise with the deaf, if they have any type of developmental delay, or if they have any type of disorder, then not only am I having to sign with them, but trying to get them to understand the meaning of what I'm saying, it becomes complicated. So I would have to say that difficulty is in all of them, but there's different degrees. So all of them, they can be.
Gracias. ¿Qué podemos hacer si no somos coaches especializados en este nicho para ayudar a difundir, a llevar este tipo de coaching tan necesario a este grupo tan importante de personas con discapacidad?
Well, you could tell them to go onto the IAC, up to the Family and Coaching website and download this video to start. You can give them my information. You can also begin to do some research on your own and look up like courses. Look for courses for people that want to understand disabilities, read up about disabilities and share that information. But absolutely be a mouthpiece, get it out there, because a lot of people don't know about it and they don't take advantage of it. So for your questions.
No sé si hay alguna pregunta más por el chat. La verdad es que es fantástico poder charlar con René y con la experiencia que tiene tan estupenda en coaching para personas con discapacidad. Aprovechad para lanzar vuestras preguntas. Me ha parecido muy interesante también cuando has dicho que demos ejemplos diferentes a las personas que tienen algún tipo de discapacidad, intentar llegar, ¿no?, a ellos a través de medios diferentes, de diferentes formas, no cerrarnos nosotros en un único canal, en una única vía, ¿no?, ir más allá.
That's right.
Yo quería comentar.
Because we're all different and we all learn differently. So, and have you ever heard the term by any means necessary? So by any means necessary.
Yo quería comentar que antes de conocer a René, jamás me había pasado por la mente la variedad de discapacidades que puede tener una persona, y que sí podemos ayudar, aunque no seamos especialistas médicos o psicólogos. La verdad que esto para mí es muy refrescante, muy comprometedor. Debo reconocer que con este tema me siento muy comprometido y bueno, esperamos que se divulgue mucho. René, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. I just want to say lastly, even if you don't have any knowledge about disabilities, getting some and just relying on your professionalism and what you do, when you do encounter someone that you may think has a disability, will go a long way. Use what you got.
Right.
Muchísimas gracias, René, por contribuir con tu ponencia a construir una mejor sociedad para nuestras familias. Mil gracias. Estamos seguros de que muchos de nuestros invitados pondrán en práctica este nuevo aprendizaje sobre coaching, sobre discapacidad, sobre familias. Muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos en esta conferencia y ahora os invitamos a que nos acompañen en la ponencia de esta noche a las 7 de la tarde hora Orlando, donde escucharemos a un conferencista extraordinario. Él se llama Gustavo de la Torre, que nos acompaña desde Chile para hablarnos de No soy el coach que quiero ser. Los esperamos. Mil gracias, René. Un placer.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Gracias.